Ryan moved carefully through the broken colony world. The sky above was covered with heavy gray clouds, and the ruins of once tall towers lay scattered across the land. Dust blew with every gust of wind, carrying the memory of a place that had fallen long ago. Ryan's boots crunched against the cracked ground as he walked, his eyes scanning every shadow. He had been traveling alone for weeks, searching for supplies, maps, or anything that could help him return to human space. The colony was empty of normal life. Only the sound of the wind and the echo of his own steps followed him. Sometimes he thought he heard movement, but it was only the ruins shifting under pressure. He had almost given up hope of finding anything useful, but his instincts kept him searching. As he entered what looked like the remains of an old outpost, he felt something different. The air was heavier, and the silence was too deep. His hand rested on the handle of his tool blade, a weapon he had shaped from mining gear. He moved down a stairwell half buried in rock. The light from his wrist lamp pushed back the dark, showing broken walls covered in strange marks. Then he heard it. A sound like a growl, low and steady, echoing from below. Ryan stopped, his heart quickening. It was not the sound of metal, nor the shifting of stone. It was alive. He thought about turning back, but his curiosity held him. If there was life here, maybe it could explain what had happened to this colony. He followed the sound until he reached a wide underground chamber. His lamp beam caught the sight, and his breath froze. Against the wall, bound by thick black chains, was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was shaped like a young woman, but her ears were pointed upward like a wolf's, her hair was wild and silver, and her eyes glowed faint gold in the dark. Her arms and legs were scarred where the chains held her. She looked both fierce and weak, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The moment his light touched her, she lifted her head and let out a growl. Her sharp teeth flashed, and she pulled against the chains, but they did not break. The sound of metal echoed through the chamber. Ryan stepped back, gripping his tool blade, but he did not attack. He saw the pain in her movements. She was not free, she was trapped. He whispered to himself, "What are you doing here?" The girl did not answer, only glared at him with eyes full of both anger and sorrow. He could see she was starving. A half-empty bowl of stale food lay on the floor near her, untouched. Whoever had chained her here had not cared for her well. Ryan felt torn. He had survived this long by avoiding trouble, by keeping his head low. This was not his fight. He could walk away, leave her behind, and no one would know. Yet as he watched her, something in his chest refused that thought. She was alive, and she was in chains. He slowly put away his weapon and reached into his pack. From it he pulled a small ration bar and held it out, keeping his distance. She eyed it with suspicion, then growled again. Ryan placed the food on the ground and stepped back, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Minutes passed. She kept watching him, waiting for a trick, but hunger finally won. She leaned forward, her chains clinking, and snatched the food. She tore it open and ate quickly, her eyes never leaving him. Ryan sat down a short distance away, leaning against the wall. He did not speak. He knew trust was not given in moments, and forcing words would only push her farther. Instead, he watched the chamber. Strange metal devices were fixed to the walls, glowing faintly with alien symbols. The chains looked forged from something stronger than steel, something not human. Whoever had built this place had planned to keep her locked forever. He thought about the raiders he had heard stories of, the ones who hunted colonies after they fell. Maybe they had found her, taken her prisoner, and left her here as a trophy. The idea made his jaw tighten. The girl finished the food and lowered her head again. She did not thank him, but the growl had stopped. Her breathing was calmer now. Then the sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnels above. Ryan froze, listening. Heavy boots. Voices speaking in a harsh alien tongue. The raiders were returning. Ryan moved quickly, putting a finger to his lips to signal silence. The girl's ears twitched, and her body stiffened. She understood. Her eyes burned with fear and hate. He pressed himself against the wall, turning off his lamp. The chamber sank into shadows. Soon figures appeared at the entrance, their weapons glowing red in the dark. They laughed as they spoke, their voices cruel. One of them pointed toward the chained girl, mocking her weakness. Ryan's grip tightened on his tool blade. His mind raced. If they found him here, it would be over. But if he stayed hidden, they might hurt her again. The girl looked at him, her glowing eyes meeting his. She did not speak, but in that look he saw her plea. She wanted freedom, not more chains. The raiders left food behind and turned to go, not noticing Ryan in the shadows. He waited until their voices faded, then finally allowed himself to breathe. He looked back at the girl. She was staring at him with a new expression. Her eyes still burned with suspicion, but now there was something else. A spark of trust. Ryan whispered softly, "I am not leaving you here." The words were simple, but they carried weight. For the first time in days of wandering through the ruins, Ryan felt he had found a purpose. He did not yet know who she was or why she was caged, but he knew chains were not her fate. The chamber felt colder after the raiders left. The girl's chains rattled softly as she shifted, her golden eyes fixed on Ryan. He stayed still for a while, listening for any returning footsteps, but the tunnels above grew silent again. Only the faint hum of the alien devices on the walls remained. Ryan finally moved closer, careful with each step. He placed his pack on the ground and pulled out a canister of water. The girl's gaze followed the movement, her ears twitching. He unscrewed the cap and held it out, but did not step too close. "You need this more than I do," he said quietly. For a moment she bared her teeth, not at the water but at him, warning him not to come near. Her body was tense like a cornered animal. Ryan did not move forward. Instead, he set the canister down in the space between them and backed away. Minutes passed before she moved. Slowly she leaned forward, her chains clinking as she stretched her arm toward the canister. She grabbed it and drank in quick gulps, water dripping down her chin. When it was empty, she let it fall and looked at him again. The growl was gone this time, though her eyes still held caution. Ryan studied her more carefully now. Her hair was tangled and wild, her skin marked with scars both old and new. The chains bit into her wrists and ankles, leaving angry red lines. She had been here for a long time. He wondered how she had survived until now. Perhaps the raiders kept her alive for reasons he did not yet understand. "What's your name?" he asked softly, not expecting an answer. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Instead she looked away, her shoulders tight. Ryan realized words might not come easily for her, or perhaps she had no reason to trust him with them. He sighed and leaned against the wall, lowering his weapon to show he meant no harm. "All right. You do not have to tell me yet. I will just call you, friend." The girl's ears twitched again, and for the first time a flicker of confusion crossed her face. It was not anger or fear, only surprise. The words seemed to hang in the air, unfamiliar to her. Ryan took out another ration bar and set it near the empty water canister. She looked at it, then back at him. This time she did not hesitate as long. Hunger was stronger than doubt. She grabbed it and ate, slower than before, as if testing whether he would take it away. When he did not, she finished it completely. As she chewed, the silence between them grew heavy. Ryan thought about the choice before him. Freeing her would not be easy. The chains were made of alien alloy that even his plasma cutter might struggle with. And if the raiders returned while he worked, they would both be trapped. Yet leaving her here was unthinkable. He remembered her eyes when the raiders mocked her. Those eyes had pleaded for freedom even when her lips spoke no words. He could not ignore that. "Listen," he said gently, "I am going to find a way to break those chains. But you need to trust me. Do you understand?" The girl raised her head, watching him with an expression caught between doubt and hope. Her lips moved, and at last a sound came. It was rough, her voice unused, but the word was clear. "Why?" Ryan blinked in surprise. He had not expected her to speak yet. The question was simple, but it cut straight to the heart of it. Why would he risk his life for her, a stranger? He thought about it for a long moment before answering. "Because no one deserves chains. Not you. Not anyone." Her golden eyes softened slightly. She tilted her head as if measuring his honesty. Then she looked down at the chains around her wrists, her claws scraping the metal. A low sigh escaped her throat. For the first time she did not look like a beast trapped in anger. She looked like someone who wanted to believe him. Ryan knew that was enough for now. He did not press her further. He pulled his plasma cutter from his pack and tested its charge. The tool gave a faint hum, the blade glowing blue. It was designed for cutting rock and scrap metal, not alien alloys, but it was the best he had. He moved closer to the chains, lifting the tool, but the girl flinched back quickly, her body tense. "Easy," Ryan said, lowering the cutter. "I will not hurt you." She bared her teeth again, not in anger this time but in fear. Her hands clenched the chains. The sight made Ryan pause. He realized she was not only scared of the tool but of what had happened before. The raiders must have used machines like this, not to free her but to harm her. So instead of trying again, he shut off the cutter and stepped back. "Not now. You need to see I mean it." He sat down again, putting the cutter away. The girl blinked, confused by his choice. He smiled faintly. "Trust takes time. I can wait." The rest of the night passed slowly. Ryan dozed against the wall, waking at every sound in the tunnels. The girl stayed awake longer, watching him with sharp eyes. Finally her head lowered, and she drifted into a light sleep, chains rattling softly as she shifted. When morning light filtered faintly through cracks in the ceiling, Ryan stretched and stood. He checked his supplies, then placed another piece of food near her before preparing to scout the tunnels. Before he left the chamber, he heard a sound behind him. Her voice, soft and rough, spoke for the second time. "Lyra." Ryan turned. She was looking at him with steady eyes. Her voice shook, but the word was clear. "My name is Lyra." Ryan smiled and nodded. "Lyra. That is a good name." He left the chamber then, but inside his chest burned a new fire. She had given him her name. It was the first step. Trust was beginning to grow. Ryan returned to the underground chamber later that day. He had searched the tunnels above for signs of the raiders, moving carefully to avoid being seen. The paths were dangerous, filled with collapsed ceilings and sharp debris, but he had managed to gather some useful scraps. Now he carried spare power cells, small metal shards, and wire. They were not weapons, but with enough creativity, they could become tools. When he entered the chamber, he found Lyra still chained in the same spot. She was awake this time, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The food he had left earlier was gone, and the water canister sat empty near her. She stared at him as he approached, but there was less hostility in her gaze. She had told him her name, and though her trust was still thin, it was growing. Ryan set his pack down and knelt near the chains. "I am going to try again," he said. His voice was calm, steady. Lyra's claws scraped against the floor, and for a moment her muscles tensed. But she did not growl. She only gave a small nod, as if allowing him to continue. Ryan lifted the plasma cutter and checked the charge. The blue blade hummed to life, glowing against the dark chamber. He pressed it carefully against one of the thick links around her wrist. Sparks flew as the tool met the strange alloy. The sound was sharp and loud, echoing off the walls. Lyra flinched, her ears twitching, but she stayed still. The cutter hissed and sparked, but the chain resisted. This was not ordinary metal. It glowed faint red under the heat, but it did not melt as quickly as Ryan hoped. Sweat ran down his forehead as he pressed harder, guiding the blade with slow control. Suddenly an alarm blared through the chamber. Red lights lit up on the walls, the alien symbols glowing brighter. The chains vibrated as if reacting to the cutter. Lyra's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. She pulled against the chains, letting out a sharp cry. Ryan gritted his teeth and kept cutting, knowing he had no choice now. The alarm meant the raiders would soon return. The chamber shook as heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnels above. Voices shouted in the alien tongue, closer every second. Ryan pushed the cutter harder, sparks flying in all directions. Finally the first link cracked, glowing white before snapping apart. Lyra tore her wrist free with a fierce pull, the sound of breaking metal echoing like thunder. She gasped, staring at her freed hand, then looked at Ryan with wild eyes. "We are not done yet," he said quickly. He moved to the other wrist, cutting as fast as he could. Lyra pulled again, and the second chain snapped with a loud clang. She flexed her fingers, blood rushing back into her hand. The footsteps grew louder. Ryan could hear the raiders shouting, their weapons charging. He moved to the chains on her ankles. The plasma cutter sparked wildly as it bit into the metal. Lyra growled in frustration, yanking hard until the first ankle chain cracked loose. She ripped the second one free just as the entrance lit up with red glow from approaching weapons. The raiders stormed into the chamber, their eyes glowing under their helmets. They raised their weapons, ready to fire, but they froze when they saw her standing tall for the first time. Lyra's golden eyes blazed with fury, her claws flexing. Ryan raised his plasma cutter, ready to fight, but Lyra stepped forward first. Her voice, raw and powerful, filled the chamber with a single word. "Free." She lunged at the nearest raider, her claws striking his weapon, sending it crashing to the ground. Sparks lit the air as the other raiders shouted in shock. Ryan moved quickly, slashing with his cutter to block another strike. The chamber became chaos. Weapons fired, claws tore, and sparks flew. Ryan fought with all the strength he had, his blade humming through the air. Lyra moved like a storm, her body fast and wild, every strike driven by years of pain and anger. Together they pushed the raiders back toward the entrance. One of the alien devices on the wall sparked from a stray shot, fire spilling across the chamber. The flames spread quickly, licking up the old wires and broken machines. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. "Ryan," Lyra called, her voice rough but strong. She kicked one of the raiders aside and pointed at the spreading flames. "Burn it. Burn all of it." Ryan understood. This place was not just her prison, it was a symbol of her chains. It had to be destroyed. He struck the wall with his cutter, sending sparks into the fire. Lyra tore down one of the glowing devices and threw it into the flames. The chamber roared with heat, smoke rising to the ceiling. The last raider stumbled back, fear on his face as the fire closed in. Lyra let out a howl that shook the chamber, a cry of freedom and rage. The raider turned and fled, leaving his weapon behind. The fire spread across the walls, consuming the chains, the devices, and the marks of her prison. Lyra stood in the center of it, her eyes glowing brighter than the flames. For the first time her body was free of chains, her spirit no longer bound. Ryan grabbed her arm. "We need to go now. This place will not hold much longer." She nodded, her breath heavy, her eyes still fixed on the fire. Together they ran through the smoke-filled tunnel, their steps fast as the flames devoured the chamber behind them. The heat followed them like a wave, chasing them upward until they burst into the open ruins above. The sky was dark with clouds, but the fire below sent smoke rising into the air. Lyra turned back once, watching the smoke climb high. Her chains were gone, her cage burned away. Her voice was soft but steady when she spoke again. Free. Ryan looked at her and nodded. Yes. You are free now. But even as they stood in the ruins, he knew the fight was not over. The raiders would come again, and the alarms would call more of them. Yet as he looked at Lyra standing tall beside him, her eyes burning with strength, he felt ready for whatever came next. Smoke rolled up from the ruins, drifting into the gray sky. The fire in the underground chamber still raged below, filling the air with a bitter smell. Ryan stood with Lyra at the edge of the cracked stone, both of them breathing hard from the fight. Their clothes were darkened with ash, their bodies weary, but neither of them would stop now. The cage was gone, but the danger was not. The raiders would not forgive what had happened. They would return in greater numbers. Ryan knew it, and Lyra felt it too. Her ears twitched at every sound, her golden eyes scanning the ruins with sharp focus. She was no longer the weak, starving prisoner he had found. She was alive with strength, even though her wounds were still fresh. Ryan adjusted the strap of his pack and pointed toward the broken horizon. We need to move. They will not stop until they find us. Lyra gave a short nod. Her voice was low, almost like a growl. I follow. Together they began to move through the ruins. The ground was rough, covered with broken walls and collapsed towers. Sometimes they had to climb over stone piles, sometimes they had to crawl through narrow gaps. The silence was broken only by distant cracks of stone falling and the far-off cry of metal creatures, machines left behind by raiders to hunt. Ryan led the way, but he often glanced back to check on her. She walked with steady steps, claws scratching lightly against the rock. She was barefoot, but the sharp stones did not slow her. She moved like she had been born to survive in places like this. Hours passed before they found an old transport ship, half buried under rubble. Its hull was broken, but the inside still had shelter. Ryan pulled the door open with effort, and together they stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, but it was safer than the open ruins. Lyra lowered herself to the floor, her body heavy with exhaustion. Ryan set down his pack and began to check his supplies. He had little food left, only 2 ration bars and a half-filled water canister. It was not enough for both of them to survive long. He handed her one of the ration bars anyway. Eat. You need your strength. She looked at him for a moment, then slowly took it. She ate in silence, chewing with care as if saving every piece. When she finished, she wiped the crumbs from her lips and spoke. You could have left me. Why not? Ryan leaned against the wall, his eyes on the dim light coming through a crack in the hull. I told you already. No one deserves chains. Not you, not anyone. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with sharp eyes. Humans do not chain. Ryan hesitated. He thought of his own people, of wars and prisons, of mistakes humans had made. Some do, he admitted. But not me. And not the kind of people I choose to stand with. Lyra lowered her gaze. Her claws tapped softly against the floor. My people, we trusted once. Others came. They feared us. They hunted us. They chained us. Her voice was low, but filled with pain. They said we were too wild. Too dangerous. So they took our strength and made it a prison. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He could see the truth in her scars, in the way she had flinched at the plasma cutter. Her people had been more than prisoners, they had been broken piece by piece. What happened to them? He asked. Lyra's golden eyes grew distant. Some are gone. Some are caged still. I do not know how many remain. The silence that followed was heavy. Ryan did not push for more. He could see it was painful for her to speak of it. Finally she lifted her head again. You fight different. Not like them. You fight for me. Why? Ryan met her gaze and answered simply. Because you are worth fighting for. Her eyes widened slightly, surprised by his words. She looked away, but a faint light flickered in her expression, like hope trying to return after years of darkness. Before either of them could speak again, a sound echoed outside. The crunch of metal feet on stone. Ryan's eyes narrowed. He crept to the crack in the hull and peered out. Several raider drones moved across the ruins, their red eyes glowing in the shadows. They were searching, their scanners sweeping across the ground. The raiders had sent machines to hunt them. Ryan turned back quickly. They are close. We cannot stay here. Lyra rose to her feet, her claws flexing. Then we run. Ryan nodded. He gathered his pack and opened the door again. They slipped out into the ruins, moving quickly from shadow to shadow. The drone's searchlights swept across the rocks, but the pair stayed low, their breaths quiet. At one point a drone came too close. Ryan raised his tool blade, ready to strike, but Lyra moved faster. She leapt forward, claws slashing, and the machine fell in sparks. She landed lightly, her eyes glowing. Good, Ryan whispered. Together they kept moving until the ruins opened into a wide canyon. Broken metal beams jutted from the cliffs, remains of bridges long fallen. They climbed down carefully, using the beams for balance. At the bottom they found a narrow cave hidden behind fallen stone. It was dark inside, but safe. Ryan lit a small glow stick, filling the cave with pale light. They sat together, breathing heavily from the long escape. Lyra curled her knees to her chest, her hair falling over her face. After a moment she spoke again, her voice softer than before. I did not trust you. I feared you. But you stayed. Ryan smiled faintly. And I will keep staying. Her golden eyes lifted to his, searching for any hint of lies. She found none. Slowly, for the first time, she gave a small nod. Then I trust. The words were quiet, but powerful. Ryan felt the weight of them. Trust was not given lightly by someone who had lived in chains. The fire of her cage had been left behind, but the bond they carried forward was stronger than steel. Outside, the night wind howled through the canyon, carrying the distant cry of raiders searching for them. Inside the cave, Ryan and Lyra sat side by side, not as prisoner and stranger, but as allies. The road ahead would be filled with danger. Yet for the first time since he had landed on this broken world, Ryan felt they had a chance. The cave gave them shelter through the night, but neither Ryan nor Lyra rested much. Every time the wind carried the hum of machines, her ears twitched and his hand went to his tool blade. The raiders were searching with drones and hounds, their shadows stretching across the broken colony world. When dawn broke through the cracks in the canyon, Ryan stepped outside to scout. He climbed a ledge and scanned the horizon. The smoke from the burned prison chamber was still visible in the distance. More troubling were the fresh tracks on the ground, wide and heavy, left by raider war beasts. They are closing in, he muttered to himself. Back in the cave, Lyra crouched near the entrance. She was alert, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. When Ryan returned, she studied his face before asking, "How many?" "Too many," he answered. "But numbers are not everything. They are hunters, yes, but we are not prey." Her head tilted at his words. "Not prey. Then what are we?" Ryan's lips curved into a grim smile. "We will be the hunters." Lyra's claws scraped softly against the stone floor. A faint growl rumbled in her throat, not of anger but of agreement. Ryan spread out the scraps he had collected from the ruins. Metal shards, wires, broken power cells, and fragments of raider machines. He had spent years making tools out of junk, and now his skills would be tested more than ever. With careful hands, he began to shape traps. Lyra watched him work. She had never seen a human build in this way. He bent wires into loops, fixed shards into hidden spikes, and set the power cells to overcharge so they would burst with energy. "You make weapons from nothing," she said. Ryan shrugged. "Humans have been doing this since the beginning. When we cannot fight with strength, we fight with our minds." She gave a sharp smile, showing her teeth. "Then I will fight with strength. Together it will be enough." When the traps were ready, they left the cave and moved deeper into the canyon. The ground there was narrow and uneven, the perfect place to turn numbers into weakness. Ryan placed the traps carefully along the path, while Lyra covered his back. Her senses were sharper than his, she could hear the distant march of the raiders long before he could. By noon, the hunters arrived. The first were drones, their red eyes glowing as they swept the ground. Behind them came the raider hounds, creatures of metal and flesh that growled as they sniffed the air. And behind the hounds marched the raiders themselves, armored and armed with plasma rifles. Ryan and Lyra hid on the high cliffs, watching the enemy move below. When the first drone passed over one of his traps, the power cell exploded in a flash of blue light. The machine fell, its body sparking. The hounds barked and howled, confusion spreading through the ranks. "Now," Ryan whispered. Lyra leapt from the cliff with a roar that echoed across the canyon. She struck the nearest hound, her claws ripping into its metal frame. Sparks flew as it collapsed. The raiders shouted, raising their weapons, but Ryan fired his cutter from above, slashing through another drone before it could fire. The canyon filled with chaos. Explosions burst as more traps triggered. Metal shards cut into raiders' armor, power cells discharged bursts of heat, and the narrow walls trapped them with no room to spread out. Lyra moved like lightning. She was faster than the hounds, stronger than the raiders expected. Her claws tore through weapons, her leaps carried her across the rocks, and her howl shook the air. Ryan fought with precision. He struck from the cliffs, then moved quickly to another spot before they could target him. His traps did the work of many fighters, cutting the enemy numbers each time they advanced. The raiders grew desperate. Their leader, a tall figure in black armor, pushed forward with a heavy weapon that glowed red. He shouted orders in the alien tongue, forcing his soldiers to charge. Ryan slid down the cliff and landed beside Lyra. "That one is the leader," he said. She snarled, her eyes burning. "Then we take him." Together they fought their way through the raiders. Ryan's cutter clashed against plasma rifles, sparks flying. Lyra's claws ripped through armor. Side by side they moved as if they had fought together for years, each covering the other without a word. Finally they faced the leader. His weapon roared with energy, sending blasts that shook the ground. Ryan rolled aside, barely avoiding the strike, while Lyra darted forward, her claws slicing through the weapon's barrel. It sparked and died in her hands. The leader stumbled back, shocked by her speed. Ryan stepped in, his cutter humming. With one swift strike, he shattered the leader's armor and sent him crashing to the ground. The remaining raiders froze, their confidence broken. Without their leader and with half their number destroyed, they began to retreat. Some dragged their wounded, others fled without looking back. Silence fell over the canyon at last. The bodies of broken drones and shattered hounds lay scattered among the rocks. Smoke drifted from the traps that had burned out. Lyra stood tall, her chest rising and falling, her golden eyes shining with wild light. She lifted her head and let out a howl, a sound of victory that echoed far beyond the canyon walls. It was not just a cry of battle, it was the cry of someone who had found freedom again. Ryan stood beside her, breathing hard but smiling. "We did it. We turned the hunt." She looked at him, and for the first time her lips curved into something close to a smile. Not pray, she said firmly. No, Ryan agreed. Never pray. They gathered what they could from the battlefield: power cells, scraps of weapons, anything useful, and then moved on. They knew more enemies would come, but the victory had given them more than supplies. It had given them hope. As the sun sank behind the ruins, painting the sky in red and gold, Lyra walked with steady steps beside Ryan. She no longer looked like a prisoner. She no longer looked like someone chained. She looked like a warrior. The Kenyan battle had left both Ryan and Lyra sore, but the fire of victory carried them forward. They traveled under the pale light of twin moons, crossing dry plains and broken metal ruins that once belonged to the colony. Each step carried the weight of survival, but also the strength of unity. By morning, they found shelter inside the remains of a collapsed tower. Its walls were cracked, but the steel bones still stood strong against the wind. They rested there, sharing the little water Ryan carried in his flask. As the silence stretched, Lyra finally spoke. Her golden eyes turned toward the far horizon, where mountains shaped like fangs cut into the sky. My people lived there once, she said softly. Ryan leaned forward. The mountains? Yes. The high caves? They were home to the clans. The raiders came many seasons ago. They burned the caves and took those they could capture. The rest scattered. I was taken when I was still young. Her voice carried no tears, but there was a deep ache in her words. Ryan sat quietly, letting her speak. I thought all were gone. But last night, when I howled in victory, I felt something answer inside me. It was faint, like an echo far away. My people are not all gone. Some survived. I know it. Ryan nodded slowly. Then we must find them. Her gaze snapped to him, surprised. You would help me search? It is not your fight. He shook his head. It is my fight now. I will not walk away. The warmth of trust passed between them in that moment. Lyra bowed her head slightly, as if giving thanks in her own way. When the sun climbed higher, they left the tower and headed toward the mountains. The path was long, but both moved with purpose. Ryan kept his eyes sharp for raiders, while Lyra kept her ears tuned to every whisper of the wind. On the second day of travel, they came across the wreck of a raider transport. It was half buried in the sand, its engines broken and its weapons stripped. Ryan searched inside, pulling out wires, energy cells, and pieces of armor. He smiled faintly as he filled his pack. These scraps may look like junk, but in my hands they are shields and knives, he said. Lyra studied him as he worked. Your kind builds from what is broken. That is why you endure. They camped that night in the shadow of the wreck. Around a small fire, Ryan asked her, if we find your people, what then? Her claws dug lightly into the sand. Then we fight to take back what is ours. No cage. No chains. No master above us. Ryan nodded. Then I will fight with you. The next days tested them harder. The land grew harsher, the air thinner as they climbed toward the mountains. They hunted small lizard beasts for food, shared every drop of water, and watched the skies for raider ships. More than once, drones buzzed overhead, but the rocky cliffs hid them. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, Lyra stopped suddenly. Her ears lifted high. I hear them, she whispered. Ryan looked around but saw nothing. Hear who? She pointed toward the dark slopes ahead. Voices. Low, but real. My people. Hope lit her golden eyes, and without waiting she ran forward across the stones. Ryan followed close, his hand tight on his blade. They climbed into a narrow pass that wound between tall cliffs. There, in the shadows, faint lights glowed. Shapes moved quietly, their eyes reflecting the firelight like amber jewels. Lyra froze. Then a deep voice called out from the darkness. Lyra? Child of the Stonefang clan. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, a tall figure stepped into the firelight. He was older, with silver fur around his face and heavy scars across his arms, but his golden eyes burned with strength. "Uncle," Lyra whispered. The two embraced fiercely, claws against shoulders, foreheads pressed together. Ryan stood aside, watching the reunion with quiet respect. Soon more figures emerged, wolf-like people with strong limbs and sharp eyes. Some looked cautious, others hopeful. They gathered around their lost kin. Lyra turned and pulled Ryan forward. "This is Ryan. He freed me. He burned the cage. Without him, I would still be a prisoner." The old warrior studied the human with careful eyes. "A human? Few remain on this world. Most were taken or killed." Ryan met his gaze steadily. "I remain. And I will stand with you, if you allow it." For a long moment, silence held. Then the elder nodded. "You fought beside my kin. That is enough. You are welcome here." The clan led them into their hidden camp inside the mountain caves. Fires burned in stone circles. Children with glowing eyes peeked from behind rocks. Warriors sharpened blades of bone and steel. Ryan saw that the clan was wounded but not broken. That night, stories were told. The elder spoke of how the raiders had swept across their land, capturing many and scattering the rest. They had hidden in the mountains, striking when they could, but their numbers had grown thin. When the tale was done, Ryan stood. "Your people are strong, but strength alone is not enough. The raiders have machines and numbers. I can give you more. I can build traps, weapons, tools. Together we can fight back." The clan murmured among themselves. Some doubted, but others nodded. Lyra's voice cut through the noise. "He is not just words. I saw with my own eyes how his mind turned scraps into weapons, how his courage cut down the leader of the raiders. He is a hunter as we are. We need him." The elder raised his hand, and the cave fell quiet. He looked at Ryan with a steady gaze. "Then you will help us prepare. Tomorrow, you will show us what the hands of a human can make." Ryan gave a short nod. "Tomorrow, then." That night, as the firelight danced across the stone walls, Ryan sat with Lyra at the edge of the camp. "You found them," he said softly. She nodded, her eyes shining with both relief and fierce pride. "I thought I was alone. But now I know I am not. And with you beside us, the raiders will learn fear." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then let them come." Above them, the stars burned bright, as if watching the birth of a new alliance. For the first time in years, Ryan felt not only the duty to survive but also the spark of a greater purpose. Together with Lyra and her people, he would help turn survival into freedom. Dawn broke over the jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the hidden camp. Fires flickered among the stones, illuminating the faces of the wolf clan. Children with wide, curious eyes peeked from behind the warriors, and adults moved with quiet purpose, sharpening blades and checking traps. Ryan stood beside Lyra at the edge of the camp, looking out toward the distant raider stronghold. Smoke rose faintly from its towers, a reminder that the enemy was still powerful, still cruel. He checked the traps they had built around the mountain paths, each one a small but potent force against the raider machines. "They will come," Lyra said softly. Her golden eyes scanned the horizon. "They will try to reclaim what they lost." Ryan nodded. "Then we will be ready. You have your people, and I have these tools. Together we will not only survive. We will fight back." Lyra's tail twitched, a sign of excitement and determination. "I will lead the charge. You will guide the traps and weapons." "Agreed," Ryan said. By midday, the raiders arrived. They came in waves, machines and war beasts leading the way, their soldiers armed and ready. But this time, the hunters were not unprepared. The wolf clan moved swiftly through the rocks, using hidden paths and vantage points. Ryan triggered the first trap, a line of power cells that exploded in brilliant blue flashes, sending sparks and shards flying. Several raider drones were destroyed instantly. Lyra leapt from the cliff above, her claws tearing through the armor of the first war beast. Her roar echoed across the valley, rallying her people. The wolf warriors followed her, swift and precise, striking the raiders from both sides. Ryan moved through the battle strategically, guiding the human-made traps. He set metal wires to trip machines, and power cells to overcharge. The raiders had expected chaos, but they were unprepared for coordination between humans and wolf warriors. The raiders tried to regroup, sending their leader forward. He was tall, armored in black, wielding a massive plasma hammer that glowed red with energy. He roared, ordering his soldiers to surround Ryan and Lyra. "Keep them away from me," Ryan shouted to the clan, his eyes fixed on the leader. Lyra darted forward, her speed unmatched. She moved like a shadow, striking the leader's weapon first. Sparks flew, and he staggered back. Ryan fired his cutter, slicing through the edges of the warhammer. The leader's weapon cracked and sparked, losing its deadly energy. The wolf warriors and Ryan pressed forward, their attacks synchronized. The raider leader swung again, but Lyra dodged with a leap that carried her behind him. Her claws tore through the back of his armor, leaving deep gouges. He roared in fury but was disoriented. Ryan seized the moment. With a quick strike, he disabled the remaining energy cells in the leader's armor. Sparks erupted, and the heavy figure fell to the ground, defeated. The remaining raiders froze, their confidence shattered. They tried to regroup, but the traps and attacks of the clan made it impossible. One by one, the machines exploded or were torn apart, and the soldiers fled in disarray. Silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke rose from broken drones, shattered war beasts, and the scattered weapons of the raiders. Lyra stood at the center, golden eyes blazing, chest heaving with exertion. She raised her head and let out a long, triumphant howl. The sound echoed across the mountains, announcing freedom to anyone who could hear it. Ryan walked to her side, breathing hard but smiling. "It's done," he said. "The raiders are gone for now." Lyra looked at him, a fierce light in her eyes. "Not gone forever. But we are stronger now. We will protect what is ours." The wolf clan gathered around them, exhausted but victorious. The elder approached Ryan and nodded. "You fought well, human. Your mind and your courage saved my people today." Ryan shook his head. "It was a team effort. I only guided the tools. You and Lyra did the real fighting." The elder smiled. "Perhaps. But it is rare for humans and wolf clan to fight together. Today you proved it is possible." Lyra stepped forward and addressed the clan. "We were hunted and caged. But we are free again. And we will remain free. We have allies, we have strategy, and we have courage. No one will take our freedom without a fight." The clan responded with growls, howls, and cheers. Children leapt in excitement, warriors flexed their claws, and even the elder allowed a small, proud smile. Ryan looked at the rising sun above the mountains. Its light painted the valley gold and orange. The ruins of the old colony were behind them, the raider threat scattered, but ahead lay the promise of rebuilding. He turned to Lyra. "This is just the beginning," he said. She nodded. "Yes. But now we know we can fight. Now we know we can survive. And now, we know we are not alone." Ryan placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Together, we will help your people thrive. Build what was lost. Protect what is ours. And we will make sure no one can chain you again." Lyra's eyes softened, but her golden gaze still burned with determination. "I will trust you with that," she said. The clan began to move back toward the mountains, carrying their wounded and reclaiming what they could from the battlefield. Ryan stayed close to Lyra, guiding her through hidden paths and teaching small improvements to their traps along the way. The sun climbed higher, and the air was filled with hope. Above the mountains, the sky was bright and clear. The stars of the night had faded, but their light seemed to linger in the hearts of those who had fought and survived. For the first time in years, the wolf clan had a chance to live without fear. And Ryan knew that humans and wolfkind, working together, could face any danger that came next. Lyra glanced at him, a fierce but grateful smile crossing her face. The world will remember this day. Not as the day we were caged, but the day we rose. Ryan nodded. And it will not end here. We will rise every day we live, stronger than yesterday. Freedom is our path, and together we walk it. The wolf clan howled once more, the sound echoing through the mountains like a call of triumph. Ryan and Lyra stood side by side, looking over the land they had reclaimed. The ruins of the old colony behind them, the horizon ahead, and the bond between human and wolf unbroken.